Modi to address the third Jan Aushadhi Diwas celebrations today via video conferencing, another effort to create awareness about Jan Aushadhi. The Prime Minister to dedicate the 7,500 Jan Aushadhi Kendra at Shillong during the event. Election fever grips the poll-bound states. Prime Minister Modi to address the first election rally in West Bengal. Union Home Minister Amit Shah to visit poll-bound Tamil Nadu and attend various programs in Kanyakumari. BJP releases the list of 57 candidates for West Bengal Assembly elections. Sindhu Adhikari to contest against Mamata Banerjee in Nandigram. The Congress releases a list of 13 candidates for West Bengal Assembly elections. 40 candidates for Assam Assembly elections. Prime Minister Modi addresses the valedictory session of the Combined Commanders Conference at Kevadia in Gujarat. The Prime Minister emphasizes the need of the armed forces to take note of the changing technology landscape and develop the nation's military into a future force. COVID-19 vaccination gains pace in the country. More than 2 crore 6 lakh doses administered of the COVID-19 vaccine in the country so far. Over 11 lakh 64,000 vaccine doses given on the 50th day of the vaccination. In international news, the US Senate passes $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. Relief package to provide $1,400 direct payments to the millions of Americans. This was the first legislative victory of the Democrats after gaining majority at the Senate. Biden says the payments can start to go out this month. And in sports news, India defeat England by an innings in 25 runs on the third day of the fourth and the final test match in Motera. 3-1 series victory secures India a place in the ICC World Test Championships final against New Zealand at the Lords. Rishabh Pant is the man of the match. In badminton, PV Sindhu storms into the women's singles final of the Swiss Open 2021 at Basel. PV Sindhu beat 4th seed Mia, which fled of Denmark 22-20, 21-10 in the semi-finals. Hello and good morning. You're watching DD India with me, Nancy Kohli. Our top story, the third Jan Aushadhi Diwas will be celebrated today. The day marks to create the awareness about the use of generic medicines. Prime Minister Modi will address the Jan Aushadhi Diwas celebrations today via video conferencing.
Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana is a revolutionary scheme which aims to make quality generic medicines available at affordable prices for all. In order to create more awareness about Jan Aushadhi, an entire week from 1st March to 7th March is being celebrated as Jan Aushadhi Week across the nation. The theme being Jan Aushadhi Seva Bhi Rozgar Bhi. The last day of the week, that is 7th March, will be celebrated as the third Jan Aushadhi Diwas. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the Jan Aushadhi Diwas celebrations on 7th March via video conferencing. He will dedicate to the nation the 7,500th Jan Aushadhi Kendra at Shillong during the event. Prime Minister will also interact with the beneficiaries of Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana. He will also give away awards to stakeholders by recognizing their excellent work. The Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana endeavors to provide quality medicines at an affordable price. The number of stores under the scheme has now grown to 7,499. All the districts of the country have been covered under the scheme. Sales in the financial year 2020-21 led to total savings of approximately 3,600 crore rupees for the common citizens. These medicines are cheaper by 50 to 90% than the corresponding market rates. The Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana is bridging the gap between the availability and the affordability of the medicines in India and thereby improving access to many drugs to the last man standing. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now moving on, politics continues at feverish pitch in West Bengal. As the election approaches, the leaders are also deciding to align with the parties of their choice. Prime Minister Modi will address the first election rally in West Bengal today. Now, as the election approaches, the leaders are also deciding to align with the parties of their choice, and the former Railways Minister Dinesh Trivedi changed the tracks to come to the BJP on Saturday, even as the BJP selected Shubhendu Adhikari to take on Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee in Nandigram.
Nandigram in West Bengal is set to witness the battle royale for this edition of the assembly election. After Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee decided to fight from Nandigram, BJP announced the name of former TMC leader Shubhendu Adhikari to take on Didi.
नंदीग्राम से श्री शुभेंदु अधिकारी जो पहले टीएमसी सरकार में मंत्री भी थे, वह वहां से नंदीग्राम से चुनाव लड़ेंगे। पार्टी ने उनको प्रत्याशी बनाया है। परिवर्तन की लहर चल रही है, सत्ता परिवर्तन की लहर है और वह लहर कुशासन भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ है, ममता सरकार के तानाशाही रवैये के खिलाफ है।
The assembly seat will see the most intense and high-pitched electoral war between Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee and her protege turned bête noire, Shubhendu Adhikari. The battle, it seems, has set the mood for the entire election. BJP versus TMC. Former Trinamool Congress MP Dinesh Trivedi is the latest in a long list of high-profile defectors from the TMC to the BJP over the past few months. He joined the BJP on Saturday in the presence of its President JP Nadu and Union Ministers Piyush Goyal and Dharmendra Pradhan, besides other leaders. Moments after joining the BJP ahead of the assembly polls, Trivedi said that it was a golden moment for him and that he was waiting for this moment.
आज मैं सचमुच ये जनता के परिवार में शामिल हुआ हूं और हम लोग क्यों शामिल होते हैं कि जनता की सेवा, ये मकसद तो यही होता है ना। अब वहां दूसरी पार्टी में मैं नाम नहीं लेना चाहता हूं, अब सब जानते हैं, वहां एक परिवार की सेवा होती है, जनता की सेवा होती है कि नहीं मुझे पता नहीं है। हमने कभी अपने विचारधारा को नहीं छोड़ा जहां भी हम रहे हैं और मेरे लिए देश सर्वोपरि रहा है और वो हमेशा रहेगा।
BJP president said that Dinesh Trivedi was the right person in the wrong party and now has come to the right party.
वो एक अच्छे व्यक्ति, अच्छा व्यक्तित्व एक गलत पार्टी में है और ये वो भी महसूस करते थे। आज उनको जब हम शामिल कर रहे हैं तो मुझे खुशी भी हो रही है कि नाउ द राइट पर्सन इज इन द राइट पार्टी। सही व्यक्ति सही पार्टी में है जहां उनका उपयोग देश की सेवा में आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में हम कर सकेंगे। अगर हम इनके राजनीतिक जीवन को देखें तो ही हैज ऑलवेज पेड द प्राइस फॉर प्रिंसिपल्स।
Dinesh Trivedi had announced his resignation from the upper house during the first half of the budget session. He is a founding member of the TMC, but the party seems least perturbed over the development. TMC has many other problems to take care of, including those of rebels who are raising their voices after being denied party tickets. West Bengal is set to witness star campaigners in the coming days. Prime Minister will address a rally in Kolkata on Sunday at Brigade Parade Ground. Preparations are afoot for the mega rally.
बंगाल के इतिहास की सबसे बिगेस्ट रैली होगी, सबसे बड़ी रैली होगी और प्रधानमंत्री जी के प्रति बंगाल की जनता में बहुत स्नेह है, बहुत प्यार है और मुझे लगता है कि जिस प्रकार से हमारे पास सूचना प्राप्त हो रही पूरे प्रदेश से, तो एक ऐतिहासिक रैली होगी।
Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee will hold a road show in Siliguri on Sunday. The campaign has already hit a crescendo, with the parties leaving no stone unturned to grab the voters' attention. The high-pitched campaign is already reflecting the high stakes that this election has come to acquire for the state and the nation. With Rajesh Raj's inputs, Bureau Report, DD India.
Now moving on, the Congress party on Saturday has released its first list of 40 candidates for the Assam Assembly elections, and as per the schedule announced by the Election Commission of India, the Assembly elections in the state will take place in 3 phases beginning 27th March. The counting of votes will take place on the 2nd of May, and earlier on in the day, the Congress also released a list of 13 candidates for the West Bengal Assembly elections. Now, senior BJP leader and Union Home Minister Amit Shah will visit poll-bound Tamil Nadu today. And during his day-long visit, Amit Shah will attend the various party-related campaign events in Kanyakumari for the 6th April Assembly elections. Amit Shah, who is in Kerala, will begin his trip to Tamil Nadu today with a visit to the Suchindram temple near Kanyakumari to offer his prayers. He'll then proceed to launch the Vetri Kodi and the Vijay Sankalp Mahasampark Abhiyan, which is a door-to-door campaign in Suchindran town, Kanyakumari. And thereafter, he will participate in a massive road show, the Vetri Kodi Iyandi in Kanyakumari. He'll round off his visit with an address to the party workers before leaving for Thiruvananthapuram. The assembly elections in Tamil Nadu and Puducherry will be held in a single phase on the 6th of April. Now, the BJP is also contesting the Lok Sabha by-polls in Kanyakumari Lok Sabha seat that was vacant after the death of the sitting Congress MP Vasant Kumar due to COVID-19. Former Union Minister Pon Radhakrishnan is BJP's candidate in Kanyakumari. Prime Minister Modi addressed the valedictory session of the Combined Commanders Conference organized by the Ministry of Defence at Kevadia in Gujarat on Saturday. He appreciated the resolute dedication shown by the Indian Armed Forces over many challenges in the last year.
The premier brainstorming event of the military commanders from the three services, the Combined Commanders Conference, was held at Kevadia in Gujarat from 4th to 6th of March. It was for the first time in the history of this conference that the top military leadership closely interacted with JCOs and other ranks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the valedictory session of the Combined Commanders Conference organized by the Ministry of Defence at Kevadia in Gujarat. The Prime Minister was briefed by the Chief of Defence Staff about the discussions during this year's conference. The Prime Minister expressed his appreciation for the structure and agenda of the conference. He particularly appreciated the inclusion of junior commissioned officers, JCOs and non-commissioned officers in this year's conference. Speaking to the highest civilian and military leadership of the national defence system, the Prime Minister conveyed his strong appreciation for the resolute dedication shown by the Indian Armed Forces over the past year in the context of COVID-19 pandemic and the challenging situation on the northern border. The Prime Minister stressed the importance of enhancing indigenization in the national security system, not just in sourcing equipment and weapons, but also in the doctrines, procedures and customs practiced in the armed forces. He emphasized the need to optimize manpower planning in both military and civilian parts of the national security architecture. He also called for a holistic approach focused on breaking down civil-military silos and on expediting the speed of decision-making. Taking note of the rapidly changing technological landscape, the Prime Minister highlighted the need to develop the Indian military into a future force. The Prime Minister pointed out that the country would be celebrating 75 years of its independence next year and called upon the armed forces to use the occasion to undertake activities and initiatives that would inspire the youth of the country.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the valedictory ceremony of the Combined Commanders Conference 2021 held at Tent City in Kevadia in Gujarat. This is the premier brainstorming event of the highest officials of the three services, wherein defense procurement, national security, multifaceted issues of national security, and also the changing scenarios, the modernization, indigenization of the military equipments and defense procurement is discussed, and also the changing scenarios of warfare are discussed. With my camera person Kuldeep, this is Meghna Dev from DD News, Kevadia.
And in a series of tweets, Prime Minister Modi has said that the Combined Commanders Conference at Kevadia was a fruitful one. The Prime Minister said, I quote, "The Combined Commanders Conference at Kevadia was a fruitful one. There were extensive deliberations on various strategic subjects, highlighted the need for making India Atmanirbhar in defence sector and reiterated the government's support for that. Every Indian is very proud of our armed forces. Their courage is remarkable." And he also urged the armed forces to think about the various reforms that would make the forces even stronger. Also discussed ways to integrate brave veterans in the celebrations to mark 75 years of independence. At the Combined Commanders Conference saw some of the innovations by armed forces that were showcased in the exhibition, unquote. And shifting focus now, getting you all the COVID-19 updates. Well, the second phase of India's largest vaccination program of COVID-19 has gained momentum. According to the latest updates this morning, the cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered across the country has crossed 2 crore 6 lakh. A total of 2,6,62,073 COVID-19 vaccine doses have so far been administered. 11,64,000 beneficiaries were vaccinated on Saturday. And moving on now to news from around the world, the Senate on Saturday passed President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief plan in a party-line vote after an all-night session that saw Democrats battling among themselves over jobless aid and the Republican minority failing in the attempts to push through the several amendments. The final bill includes $400 billion in one-time payments of $1,400 to most Americans, $300 a week in the extended jobless benefits with the 9.5 million people out of work in the crisis, and $350 billion in aid to the state and the local governments affected by the pandemic. The Senate voted 50 to 49 with no Republicans voting in favor. It is one of the largest stimulus packages in the US's history. And although the fight is not over, as the bill needs to return to the House of Representatives, which approved a slightly different version a week earlier. The chamber set a record in its longest single vote in the modern era. The Senate Democrats used a process called reconciliation to pass the measure with a simple majority. Now, meanwhile, the U.S. President Joe Biden said on Saturday that the Senate passage of the COVID-19 aid bill means that $1,400 payments to most Americans will start to go out this month, and the bill's provisions will speed up manufacturing and the distribution of the vaccines. Joe Biden, speaking at the White House after the American Rescue Plan bill passed the Senate on a party line 50 to 49 vote, said that over 85% of American households will receive the payments, with a couple with 2 children making $100,000 annually receiving about $5,600.
I promised the American people that help was on the way. Today, I can say we've taken one more giant step forward in delivering on that promise that help is on the way. The resources of this plan will be used to expand and speed up manufacturing and distribution of vaccines so we can get every single American vaccinated sooner than later. I believe we'll have enough by the middle of May. This plan will get checks out the door starting this month to the American people who so desperately need the help. This plan puts us on a path to beating the virus. Now this bill returns to the House of Representatives, which has done a great job from the beginning, where I hope it will find quick passage so it can be sent to my desk to be signed into law.
Now, moving on to an update on the situation in Myanmar, where security forces have again used force on Saturday to disperse the anti-coup protesters. That's a day after the UN Special Envoy urged the Security Council to take action to quell the junta violence that this week left about 50 peaceful demonstrators dead and scores injured. Fresh protests were reported in the biggest city of Yangon, where stun grenades and tear gas were used against protesters. The Karen National Union, that's one of the most powerful and best established of Myanmar's Myriad militia groups, took part in an anti-coup protest on Friday in the country's east. The former insurgents from the Karen ethnic minority joined villagers and township residents who took to the streets in a peaceful demonstration in Hapun, Khain State. A statement by the KNU said the organization supports the protesters' demand to end the military rule following the last month's military coup. The escalation of violence has put pressure on the world community to act to restrain the junta, which seized power on the 1st of February by ousting the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, in a historic Iraq visit, Pope Francis held a historic meeting with Iraq's top Shia cleric Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani on Saturday in Iraq's holy city of Najaf. Pope Francis, who arrived in Iraq on Friday, is on the first ever visit to Iraq. Also, the pontiff is making his first international trip since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
A passionate appeal for coexistence in a land torn by sectarianism and violence. This was the clear message that emerged from this historic meeting between the most powerful figure of the Catholic world and the tallest spiritual leader of Shia Muslims.
Hostility, extremism, and violence are not born of a religious heart, they are betrayals of religion. We believers cannot be silent when terrorism abuses religion. We are called unambiguously to dispel all misunderstandings. Let us not allow the light of heaven to be overshadowed by the clouds of hatred. Dark clouds of terrorism, war, and violence have gathered over this country. Today, let us pray for those who have endured these sufferings, for those who are still dispersed and abducted, that they may soon return home. And let us pray that freedom of conscience and freedom of religion will everywhere be recognized and respected. These are fundamental rights because they make us free to contemplate the heaven for which we were created.
The Grand Ayatollah also called on world religious leaders to hold great powers to account for wisdom and sense to prevail over war. The meeting took place in the holy city of Najaf during a whirlwind and a risky tour of Iraq. It marked the first time a pope has met with such senior Shia cleric. Iraqi children could be seen lined up along the streets and waved Iraqi and Vatican flags at the Pope. After the meeting, the Pope visited the ruins of the ancient Ur in southern Iraq, revered as the birthplace of Abraham, the father of Judaism, Christianity and Islam. He also attended an inter-religious meeting at the ancient Mesopotamian site. Later in the day, he returned to celebrate a mass in Baghdad. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Pope Francis led a mass in Iraq on Saturday as part of his historic visit to the country amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Pope Francis celebrated mass in a packed Chaldean Catholic cathedral in Baghdad that featured chanted scripture readings and a choir singing hymns. There were scenes of sheer delight in the Iraqi capital Baghdad and people attended the mass. While he is the first head of the Roman Catholic Church to preside over a mass in Iraq, the COVID-19 restrictions limited the number of people allowed in the church to about 100, but they included the country's president, foreign minister and the Speaker of the House of Parliament, all of whom are Muslims. Some parts of the service were held in Chaldean, that's a version of the Semitic language believed to be spoken at the time of Jesus Christ. And shifting focus now, let's take a look at all the updates on COVID-19 from across the world. Well, so far, over 11 crore 70 lakh people have contracted COVID-19 globally, while the tally of recovery stand over 9 crore 26 lakh recovering from it. The COVID-19 has claimed over 25 lakh 99,000 lives worldwide. The US still continues to remain the worst affected from COVID-19, where more than 2 crore 96 lakh 53,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported. The country's fatalities have crossed 5 lakh 37,000. Now, meanwhile, in Argentina, the protests are going on against the government of President Alberto Fernandez and his handling of the COVID-19 vaccines in Buenos Aires. Violence was seen on the streets of Argentina as residents faced off with the riot police over lockdown restrictions in the city of Formosa. International human rights groups have condemned what they say is indiscriminate force by the police. The eyewitnesses shared on social media video of officers engaged with the protesters. The local media also reported the firing of the rubber bullets and tear gas. Formosa is one of the country's poorest provinces and has been hard hit by a recession made worse by the COVID-19 crisis. Now, Argentina has reported more than 2 million cases of COVID-19 and more than 52,000 deaths. And protesters clashed with the police in Paraguay's capital as the anger over the government's handling of the COVID-19 crisis boiled over into the streets and forced the resignation of the country's top health official. The security forces fired rubber bullets and tear gas on the hundreds of rioters that gathered in the downtown capital, while protesters broke down security barriers, burned the road barricades and threw stones at the police. While Paraguay is posting record number of COVID-19 cases daily, and earlier on Friday, the health minister Giulio Mazzoloni resigned a day after the lawmakers called for his ousting. The Paraguayan president has asked all the cabinet ministers to resign following clashes between the demonstrators and the police at the protest against the government's handling of the COVID-19 crisis. Now, as Brazilian authorities announced new restrictions in the city of Rio de Janeiro, keeping in view an uptake in the COVID-19 cases, the city is under curfew. While Rio's roads were seen empty during the night curfew, the restaurants were closed while certain businesses like non-essential services have completely been shut. The new restrictions in Rio are due to last through 11th of March, and Brazil is the second most affected country from COVID-19. It has registered COVID-19 cases passing 1,939,000 with more than 2,64,000 fatalities. And moving on now to sports news, and big news coming in from there. While India have thumped England by an innings and 25 runs inside 3 days in the fourth and the final test to complete a 3-1 series victory in Ahmedabad. Now, India's 13th consecutive Test Series victory at home also secured their place in the June final of the World Test Championship against New Zealand.
England's series defeat in India was sealed with one final abject batting collapse on the third day of the fourth Test in Ahmedabad. Needing 160 to make India bat again, England found themselves losing wickets at regular intervals. Dan Lawrence showed composure in his 50, but England were eventually pulled out for 125 to lose by an innings and 25 runs. Akshar Patel claimed 5 for 48, his fourth 5-wicket haul of the series, and Ravichandra Ashwin 5 for 47, as England lost all 10 wickets in an innings to spin for the third successive test. The home side had earlier extended their first innings from 294 for 7 to 365 all out. Washington Sundar though was stranded on 96 not out when the last 3 wickets fell for no runs in 5 deliveries. In taking the series 3-1, India earned a place in the World Test Championship final, booking a meeting with New Zealand in June. England finished 4th in the table. The first of the 5 T20 international between these two sides will kickstart from Friday. Sports Desk, TD India.
And in badminton, the Olympic silver medalist PV Sindhu has entered the women's singles final of the Swiss Open tournament at Basel. She defeated 4th seed Mia Bichfeld of Denmark 22-20, 21-10 in the semi-finals on Saturday. And in the men's singles semi-final, former champion Kitambi Srikanth lost to top seed Victor Axelsen of Denmark 13-21, 19-21. In the men's doubles, world number 10 pair of Satvik Sairaj, Ranki Reddy and Chirag Shetty will face the 6-seeded Danish pair of Kim Astrup and Anders Karup Rasmussen in the semi-finals today. The Indian pair progressed to the last 4 after defeating Malaysian combine of Ong Yu Sin and Theo Yi. Now in football, Barcelona continued their rampant run of domestic form to beat Osasuna 2-0 away from home on Saturday and move to within 2 points of La Liga leaders Atletico Madrid, with Lionel Messi setting up goals scored by Jordi Alba and teenager Alexi Moriba. The victory followed Barca's heroic second-leg comeback win over Sevilla to reach the Copa del Rey final on Wednesday and notch the 13th league win in 16 games. 2 goals from Alvaro Morata helped Juventus come from behind to beat Lazio 3-1 in Series A Football League on Saturday, closing the gap on the leaders Inter Milan to 7 points. Joaquin Correa capitalized on an underhit back pass from Juve's Dejan Kulusevski before finishing well to give the visitors a surprise 14th-minute lead. Now with Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench, the champions struggled to create any real openings until Adrian Rabiot scored a rare Serie A goal, firing into the roof of the net from a tight angle 6 minutes before the break to level. Sergej Milinkovic-Savic almost put Lazio back ahead but was denied by the crossbar, and Juve capitalized by edging ahead through a fine Morata finish in the 57th minute. While 3 minutes later, Morata slotted home from the penalty spot after Aaron Ramsey had been fouled to make sure of a win that moved Juve on the 52 points, 1 behind AC Milan. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the news, but news and updates will continue here on DD India. For the moment, thanks for being with us.